good, Glenn? All right. Okay, I usually have Addison and Brooklyn hand out all this stuff. Do I have a couple volunteers to pass these out? All right, there's one. There's two, three. Okay, come get them. Yeah, you get this side, and you get that side. Put them up with brother now. All right. This isn't on the sheet. This is probably going to be a defense of the Bible message. The Bible says in 1 Peter 3:15, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is in you, with meekness and fear. Okay. We're supposed to be able to give a defense, and I hope with the stuff we're going to cover tonight, it'll help you and me to better defend God's word. Okay. Now you'll need a pen or a pencil, just like Sunday night. Ken hands this stuff out, and yeah, so should be used to that. Okay. Some of these blanks are pretty short, but that's okay. I might ask for some guesses. See how you do. All right. Wow, my helpers are doing a great job. Whoa. Thank you. Now, did you get one for yourself, Levi? All right. Did you get one for yourself? You gonna help Grandma fill hers out? Yeah, why don't you do that? Okay. Thank you. Well, you can go back now. Yeah, nothing in the offering plate. Okay. Of course, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And a lot of evolutionists don't believe that. They want to leave God out of creation. We'll get into uniformitarianism here in just a minute. They don't know really how things started. They call it the Big Bang. Came out of nothing. Nothing came out, or everything came out of nothing. And that doesn't make any sense. I'm sure you've heard Kent say, and maybe you've heard me say, it takes more faith to be an evolutionist to believe that everything came out of nothing than it does to believe the Bible, that God created the earth, the heavens and the earth. They have no witness. No person was around at the beginning when God created, but God gave us his word here. He was a witness, and we need to take him at his word. And I think if you have a hard time believing Genesis 1:1, you're probably going to have a hard time believing a lot of the rest of the Bible. So this is pretty foundational. Genesis, you see, Genesis 6:17a, behold, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth. Now, the great flood has a lot to do with the age of the earth. Okay. Now, the evolutionists will say it was a local flood. Well, how can you cover up? I've seen pictures of the highest mountain, and the ocean comes up here, and then there's a cutoff, and then there's a rainbow on the side. So the flood covered all the mountains, but it was just local. Okay. Now, how can you do that? You can't. And then God said he'd never flood the earth again with his rainbow promise, never flood the earth again. But if the flood was a local flood, have there been local floods since then? All the time, right? So God lied if that's what it meant. So it had to be a global flood. Had to be a global flood. And then 2 Peter 3:5a and b says, for this they were willingly or ignorant of. And that's what it is. They're willingly ignorant. They do not want to admit there's a God. And they're going to have to face him someday. They're doing everything they can to say that, no, there's no God. I'm not going to have to face a judgment. It's not going to, well, they're going to find out they're wrong. Okay, that by the word of God, the heavens were of old. Okay, now uniformitarianism is what they like to believe, that what's happening now has always happened. It's the current rate of erosion, rainfall, whatever, is happened forever, going back, unless they don't want to believe it. Okay, if we can show some evidence, hey, you guys want uniformitarianism, then we'll take you back, and it disproves your data. Then they'll say, well, no, something else happened. We've got another theory about that. So they like it until they don't like it. Okay, all right. Now I picked out several evidences. There's several more. I picked out a few evidences here that kind of disproves these evolutionary claims. Okay, got your pen ready? This is incredible. Here's how big the Earth is. There's a net gain of 19 billion tons of dirt and rock debris added to the oceans every year. Okay. Now I've heard talk of the Amazon River, how two rivers come together. One is muddy, the other one's clean, and they stay together. But at the mouth of that, I guess you can't see the other side. If you go to the mouth of the Amazon River, if you got on the left-hand side, you can't see the right-hand, the land on the other side. It's that wide. So we got a lot of rivers like that that are pouring into the oceans every year, and most of the sediment, of course, stays close to the ocean. At the bottom of the Mississippi River, the water flows down there full of all that good topsoil from the Midwest, and when it hits the Gulf of Mexico, bam, it's a lot bigger than the river, and so it dumps all that dirt down, all the great topsoil. That's why the delta at the end of the Mississippi River probably has the best topsoil in America. It all came from Nebraska, Missouri, and Ohio, and all that. Okay, so most of the sediment's close to the end of the rivers and so forth. But if they take an average, there's 1,300 feet of sediment on the ocean floors. Okay, now this would take. Now I'm a math person, so that's a short blank. Remember the little less than sign from math? Okay, it's less than 12 million years. Now that doesn't mean it is 12 million years, but the farthest at the current rate, uniformitarianism, at the current rate, if you go back in time, it would take less than 12 million years for that sediment to have accumulated. But the evolutionists say the Earth is about 13 billion years old. Okay, now 12 million years is a long time, but nothing compared to 13 billion. Okay, so they have a problem with that, right? Now, if the current rate of erosion adding to the oceans did happen over 3 billion years, the sediment would be, ready for this, drum roll, 250 times as thick. 250 times as thick. Do you think that the coastline cities would be in trouble? Yeah, I believe so. Now, one thing that's holding down the water, the sponges. You ever think how much water would be in the ocean if it wasn't for the sponges that are in there? Okay, think about that. Okay, now, we don't believe that everything that's happening now happened constantly in the past. And I got a question there. What happened about 4,500 years, 4,300 years ago that would have added a lot of sediment to the ocean? On three. 1, 2, 3. You're supposed to say the flood, okay? We'll try that again. 1, 2, 3. The flood. Okay. All right. That would have added a tremendous amount of, because the oceans covered the whole planet, it would have washed tons and tons of debris into the ocean. Okay. Number 2, recession of the moon. All right. When did God create the moon? Anybody know? A day? Any guesses? 4. Okay. Day 4. Right. Okay. Now the oceans have a pull on the moon. Anybody know about how far the moon is away? I heard a blonde joke one time. 2 blondes were laying on the beach, and in Virginia Beach, I guess. I just picked one. And they're laying there looking up the moon, and one of them says, "What are we closer to, Miami, Florida, or the moon?" The other one says, "The moon. We can't see Miami from here." Okay. All right. So anyway, the oceans have a pull on the moon, and the moon has a pull on the tides. But you think well, I printed it out there for you. The moon's getting a little farther away every year, about an inch and a half. Okay, an inch and a half a year. The moon's getting a little farther away all the time. Now we're 239,000 miles roughly from the moon. Is an inch and a half? Can you detect an inch and a half? No, no. Okay. Now, if you go back in time for 3.5 billion years ago, you wouldn't have to go back that far because at 1.55 billion years, the moon would have been in contact with the Earth. Okay? And they're saying the Earth was created 3 billion years ago. If going forward, the moon's getting farther away. Going back in time, the moon's getting closer, closer, closer. Okay? So if you go back 1.5 billion years, that just boggles my mind. 1.5 billion years. Okay? Anyway, the moon would have been in contact with the Earth. But it wouldn't even had to get that close because if it got close enough, the Earth's gravity would overcome the forces that hold the moon together, and it would explode, and we'd probably have a ring around the Earth like Saturn has rings. Okay, so you don't even have to go back 1.5 billion years, which again, that's just an incredible number. Now, if we have creation happening about 6,000 years ago, the moon would be only 755 feet closer to the Earth. You go back 6,000 years, the moon would only be 755 feet closer. Okay? Not that much. Not that much. Okay? All right. Hopefully your mind's not getting too tired with all these numbers and so forth, but that's the way it is. Okay. The faint sun paradox. Right? Even the evolutionists have a problem with this. Okay. Now, when what's happening in the sun, a lot of it's made out of hydrogen, right? Made out of hydrogen. And hydrogen is fusing into helium, okay? And that's what we're trying to get on the Earth. I guess the MIT, all those, the brightest people on the planet basically, are trying to develop a fusion reactor. They're trying to get hydrogen to fuse into helium, and it produces a tremendous amount of energy. Okay, and that's what's happening on the sun all the time. And the nice thing about fusion energy is if something goes bad and hydrogen gets released into the atmosphere, is that a problem? No. Helium gets released into the atmosphere. That happens all the time. Balloons, helium balloons are sold. Okay, no problem. It's not like fission reactors like 3 Mile Island. If something happens there, then you get some radiation coming out. So fusion is I've heard it's the hardest technological challenge of all time to build a fusion reactor. And we're still trying to do it. Guess what? God did it when he created the sun and all the stars. Just like that, okay? Amazing. We can't get it going with all the geniuses we got going. So producing all that heat, the sun's getting hotter and hotter. It's getting brighter, brighter, and hotter. Those are the blanks. It's getting brighter and it's getting hotter as time goes by. Now, if it's getting brighter and hotter going forward, what must have happened in the past? It must have gotten dimmer and cooler. Okay, dimmer and cooler. Write that down. I'll get to the thing. Okay, if you follow the evolutionary time scale, if you go back 3.5 billion years, 3.5 billion years, the sun would have been 30% dimmer, and the Earth's crust and seas would have been so cold they'd have been frozen solid. Okay, they'd have been frozen solid, and that's when life supposedly started on the Earth. A solid frozen planet and life started. Make any sense? No. Okay, number 4. You've probably heard about this, soft tissue and fossils. Okay, now I guess all the supposed experts said that the dinosaurs all died out 65 million years ago when a meteor, a huge meteor, asteroid, something hit the Earth and killed all the dinosaurs. Now my thought is, if you can kill, you got something big enough to kill all the brontosauruses and Tyrannosaurus rexes, Stegosauruses, and all those, why didn't it wipe out all the little rabbits and squirrels and the chipmunks? Okay, if it kills off all the big ones, why didn't it kill off all the small ones? There wouldn't have been anything left. So it doesn't even make any sense. But 2010, a lady named Dr. Mary Schweitzer found a T-Rex bone, and when she was going through it, she found blood vessels with red blood cells that are very similar to modern day reptiles and birds. Thigh bone of a T-Rex found in Montana. Okay. Levi, is a T-Rex your favorite dinosaur? Milo, what's your favorite dinosaur? A raptor, okay. All right. I had a raptor shirt on the other night. All right. Now this is supposedly, it boggles my mind that anybody believes that red blood cells and flexibility could be preserved for 65 million years. Okay, right? It just makes no sense at all. But if you don't want to admit that God created stuff 6,000 years ago, I guess you'll fall for anything. Okay, and that's what they've done. Now, the same kind of evidence was found in Egyptian mummies. I'd like that to be your job. Let's take a mummy and tear it apart. Let's find out what it's made out of. Okay, but they found blood vessels and so forth, and then this guy, the Tyrolean Iceman, found in the Alps in 1991. Maybe he saw the Bigfoot and got scared and went into a cave and froze. I don't know. Believed to be about 5,000 years old. So they'll admit that he's 5,000 years old, but the dinosaurs, oh, they can't be, even though the evidence says it is. Right. Now, this is something that we cannot see. The magnetic, if we didn't have the magnetic field, I don't know how much sunblock you'd have to put on to keep from getting scorched every day. Okay, you probably wouldn't have to stand in the sun for 5 minutes and you'd have a severe sunburn. So this is very, very important. Okay, now they've started tracking this since 1845. The decay has been 5% per century. 5% per century. So going back in time, it was 40% stronger in AD 1000. So you could probably go back, if you could transport yourself back in time 1000 to 1000 AD, you wouldn't need SPF 50, 30, 20. You wouldn't need anything at all, probably. Skin cancer was unheard of back then. Okay? Now they figured out that the strength of the field gets cut in half every 1,465 years. Of course, nobody's alive now that was then, but that's pretty dramatic. It's half as much every 1,465 years. Okay, so going back in time, if it's getting weaker going forward, it's got to be going stronger going backwards. Okay, the Earth's inner core temperature was hotter. So the inner core is cooling off, but going back in time, it was hotter. And if you go back 20,000 years, it would have been so hot that all the water on the Earth would have evaporated. Okay, no more water; it would all been evaporated. So it can't be older. Now, that's not saying it is 20,000 years, but going back that far, that's as far back as you can take it and have any water on the planet. Okay, so that's impossible to be that old. All right, carbon-14 dating. You all heard of that, right? Okay, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, it's used to date fossils and it's also called radiocarbon. Radiocarbon. Now you've seen it has a short half-life of 5,730 years. You say, well, that's pretty long. Well, compared to some of these really radioactive elements, unfortunately, like uranium and thorium, they have half-lives of like 1,000,000 years. Okay, so they have a hard time storing that. So when the radioactive material comes out of like 3 Mile Island, it's still emitting a lot of radiation, but not enough to produce electricity. They have to put it somewhere, they truck it out west and put it in a salt mine, and hopefully nobody ever blows that up because it's still very, very radioactive. If you got a half-life of 1,000,000 years, you got to store it someplace very, very secure because in anybody's lifetime, it's still going to be there. 50 years from now, it's going to be almost as radioactive as it is now. Okay, but carbon-14, 5,730 years, that means that it'll only remain there for, now this is compared to 1,000,000 years, it's 100,000 years. 100,000 years. So any carbon-14 will only be around for 100,000 years. So, but that's not bad. Okay, everybody's admitting that. Okay, now they've dated diamonds at a 1 to 3 billion years old. So, ladies, according to if you're married, you got that ring on. Okay, that is supposed to be between 1 and 3 billion years old. Okay, but they found carbon-14 in them. How can that be? If all the carbon-14 has to be gone within 100,000 years, that means the ring cannot be older than 100,000 years. So they're claiming them to be 1 billion years, 3 billion years. And then this next statistic was pretty cool, I thought. If every atom on Earth is carbon-14, every atom, you, me, the trees, animals, rocks, whatever, there won't be anything left after 1,000,000 years. Okay? Now that doesn't mean it's 1,000,000 years old. Okay? That means that's the maximum amount that can be around. And the evolution said, well, yeah, but we still believe it's 3 billion years old. So, like I said, they like uniformitarianism until they don't, until we can prove them wrong. Okay. Now, the Earth's magnetic field, we talked about this a little bit. It was stronger in the past, which protected us from solar radiation and reduced carbon-14 production. So creatures in the past had less carbon-14 in them when they died because of the protection from the magnetic field. So their deaths were much more recent than reported. Okay, so things are not decaying now at the same rate that they did before. Okay, now, I was talking to Glenn a little earlier. He really likes salt, so you'd like this next one. Okay, every year, through erosion, dust, underground seepage, this is amazing, about 458 million tons of NaCl are added to the oceans every year. Okay, now from chemistry class, what's NaCl stand for? Sodium fluoride, yeah, sodium fluoride, good. Table salt, okay? So we get 458 million tons added to the oceans. How's that sound, Glenn? All right. And 122 million tons are removed, and for a net gain of 336 million tons every year. So it should be getting easier to float in the ocean, right? Because there's so much more salt in it than there was. I was never too good at floating, but it should be getting easier as time goes by. Now, at 3 billion years, at the current rate of accumulation, if we take them at uniformitarianism, there should be 70 times more salt in the oceans than there is today. And even I could float in that. But at 70 times more salt, it would be a lot easier to float. Okay? Now, to counteract their 3 billion years, if there was no salt in the ocean to start with, God had created all fresh water, which I don't believe for a minute, but if he created all fresh water and then the erosion started, All the saltiness would have accumulated in 42 million years, well short of 3 billion. Okay? Now, did God create, you think he created some salt water at the beginning and some fresh water? I think so. He made some of the sea animals to be able to survive in salt water, and he made others to develop to live in fresh water. So that there was salt in the oceans to start with. And let's see, the last blank here. God created the ocean with salt in it, so the fish and other creatures he made on day. When did he create all the fish and the birds? Day 5. Yeah, good. Day 5. Day 5. And what do you think would have washed a whole bunch of salt in the ocean at one time? Okay, we'll do a drum roll again. What washed a whole bunch of salt in the ocean for about 4,500 years ago? The flood. Very good. All right, catching on here. Okay, the flood. That changed a lot of things. Um, the evolutionists don't want to admit that, though. Okay, this next one's a little technical, but uranium and thorium, when you find them in the ground, well, they're producing radioactivity all the time. You can't stop it. It's like the Terminator. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. They finally did stop him, but they tried all kinds of things. But you can't stop radiation. Okay, they just emit uh, helium all the time. Okay, helium's the second lightest gas. Any guesses as to the first lightest gas? Hydrogen. Hydrogen's the lightest. Okay. Why don't they? If hydrogen is the lightest gas, why don't they put that in blimps anymore? Yeah, the Hindenburg burst into flames, and it's a terrible thing. Okay, so they got to use helium. And I've heard some sad news that the Earth's going to run out of helium in, I don't know, 25 or 30 years. What are we going to do? No more birthday balloons. Okay, it's kind of sad. Hopefully they're wrong. Let's they find some different sources of that. Okay, now when you pop a helium balloon, what happens to the helium? It goes up. Some of it just goes out into outer space and never come back. Some of it, if it's high in the atmosphere, it can go because it's so light. So it should have all escaped in less than 100,000 years. At the current rate, uniformitarianism, at the current rate, it would all be gone in 100,000 years. So what happens to the 3 billion years? I mean, 100,000 years is just drop in the bucket compared to that. Okay. Now they drilled in some rocks there in New Mexico, and they got some samples of zircon. What do they make zircon into? Yeah, fake diamonds, cubic zirconium. Okay, and I'm told that you can't tell the difference right away. So if I told the girls in class, you can tell how much your boyfriend loves you by what you get. If you find out he gave you a zirconium ring, he either broke or he doesn't love you a whole lot. Okay, hope you get a real diamond. Okay, so these crystals had uranium and helium in them. Okay, they're so deep and so hot that all the helium should have escaped. You know, when you heat things up, when you heat water up, it boils faster. Okay, the helium should have all been gone, but they contained up to 58% of all the helium that uranium could have generated. Right? The hotter the rocks, the more helium should have escaped. But they still got a lot of helium in them. Now, if they use uranium lead dating, they say, hey, these rocks are 1.5 billion years old. But if you use the actual rate of helium diffusion, they only have an average diffusion rate of 6,000 years. Backs up the Bible completely. And the evolutionists have tried to disprove this. I said, well, there's contamination, there's this and that. And they completely destroyed the evolutionist argument on this one. This is rock, pun intended, rock solid evidence that They're 6,000 years old. Right. And I think this is the last one till we get to the monkeys. All right. Recent volcanic activity. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, the volcano. It's in New Zealand. Okay. That happened about 50 years ago. Now, I'll say 60 years ago. Okay, because the book that I got this from is probably 10 years old anyway. Okay, 3 different tests. Now they have like uranium lead, and they have potassium argon, and so forth. So 133 million years old, those rocks, 197 million years old, and then 3.908 billion years old. I'm sure the evolution is like that last one. Hey, 3.9 billion years old, that backs up our theory. And then they said, yeah, but this only happened 60 years ago. I don't know what the evolutionists think when they can prove, hey, these rocks came out of a volcano that just was 60 years ago. And then, right here in the United States, 1980, okay, Mount St. Helens. We've got our own little laboratory right out there in Mount St. Helens. They got the rocks out of there. They said, damn, where'd you get these? 2.4 million years old. Well, 1980, just a few years ago. So you can't trust these dating methods. You just can't. They're not to be trusted. It's just, I don't know why. Well, they make some assumptions that get them to age that long. Okay, March 19th, coming out of Mount St. Helens, they had a 20-mile-long mud flow from Mount St. Helens, and it created a 140-foot deep canyon. And I have a picture that I can show you. In one day, just one day, a canyon 1/40th the size of the Grand Canyon was formed. And I can just pass this again a little bit. Maybe. Imagine what the flood did over a year's period. It wasn't a little bit, it was a lot of water over a little bit of time. The evolutionists would say, oh, the Grand Canyon was formed with a little bit of water over a long period of time. And if you've ever seen pictures of the sediment layers in the Grand Canyon or some of those canyons, there's a lot of little lines, okay? And the evolutionists say, okay, that's proof that this layer took a year to lay that down. And the next layer took a year. And the next layer took a year. They have 100, I think it's 100 feet deep, 140 feet deep, and all those little lines are just like in the Grand Canyon, line after line after line after line after line after line, 140 feet all in one day. Okay, so much for a layer a year. So I hope this has helped. Little defense showing that the Bible is true. And then I had one more page, and yeah, this was a big thing when I was in college, going around. If you put a bunch of monkeys, gave them a bunch of typewriters, eventually they would type out the complete works of Shakespeare. Okay, seriously, the college kids believe some remarkable stuff. My roommate got into the idea, that was when 3 Mile Island was going to be built. He was very much against it. And he said, if we build 3 Mile Island, we're gonna just a very few years, we're gonna be able to grow bananas. We'll have a banana plantation in Pennsylvania. Because it was going to cause so much heat and humidity and so forth. Well, you saw how that worked out, right? Yeah. My roommate was not saved, and he believed all kinds of stuff. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. So Plymouth University in the United Kingdom, they installed a keyboard computer screen in the monkey enclosure at the zoo. They took 6 macaws and they covered it up so the monkeys couldn't ruin it. Right? They gave 6 monkeys, a computer for a month. What they got was a mess, right? See, the first thing the lead male did was to find a stone and start bashing the computer with it. So they had to make it pretty tough to take that. The younger ones did press some keys, but they spent most of the time sitting, jumping on the computer, or unfortunately using it as their commode. Okay, so they had the monkeys couldn't ruin it. They produced 5 pages of text after a month, composed mainly of the letter S. Not one single recognizable word was in sight. The letter A was the only vowel to be used, and it did not make an appearance until page 4. And I think they printed this book out. I think that the complete works of 6 monkeys. Okay, I don't know how many pages they got, but nowhere, no intelligent things at all yet. Okay, and then some stuff at the bottom addressing that the idea that time plus chance could have created life. Sir Fred Hoyle said, "Imagine 10 to the 50th blind persons. That's 100,000 billion people standing shoulder to shoulder. They would more than fill our entire planetary system, each with a scrambled Rubik's Cube. Try to conceive the chance of them all simultaneously arriving at the solved form." Okay. A blind person trying to solve the Rubik's Cube. I can't solve a Rubik's Cube without the instructions, okay? Now, I've got a grandson that is very, very good at it. Talon can do it in what, a minute, less than, you can scramble up all you want, and he knows how to do it. Paul can solve, if you don't get it too far, he can look at it and solve it behind his back, okay? Which is, really good. They didn't get that from me. They must have gotten that from Nancy. I couldn't get it. Okay. All right. So, little defense for the gospel. You want to keep this up to you. Some good stuff here, though. Why the Bible can be believed and the evolutionists can't. All right. Let's have a word of. Oh man. Okay. Yeah. Kent and Glenn put together PowerPoint. So let's go through it here. See what we had. I forgot. I'm sorry, Glenn. Okay, little sediment on the ocean floor. The moon's getting how much farther away every year? 1.5 inches. Yeah, 1.5 inches. All right. The faint sun. Is the sun getting hotter and brighter as we go forward, or cooler and dimmer? Hotter and brighter, right? Okay. Number 4, soft tissue and fossils. Okay, where'd they find the soft tissue in Montana? In a T-Rex, right? What's T stand for? Tyrannosaurus, yeah, good, okay. Number 5. What does the magnetic field protect us from? There it is, solar radiation. Okay, if it wasn't for that, we'd all be sunburned in a hurry. Probably fried. Number 6. Q14 and fossils. Okay. I had to memorize the half-life carbon-14 at one time. Little salt in the ocean. There's not too much salt there because Glenn's got it all stored at his place. All right, number 8. Kent said this is actually an answer to Genesis picture. Okay. The helium leaving the radioactive rocks. Okay. There shouldn't be that much helium in the rocks if it's billions and billions of years old. And what else have we got here? Number 9. Recent volcanic activity. What's the volcano they studied in America? Mount St. Helens, right. And there's one of our genius monkeys going to work on a typewriter. Right. Hitting the letter, what letter did they hit the most? S, right. They must have liked that curved letter. Okay, all right. Thank you, Glenn. All right, let's have a word of prayer, and then we'll sing a song. Lord, thank you for this lesson. And I pray that it's been helpful. Thank you that your word is true and that science does back up what the Bible says, and help us to believe it even more.
So we put this safety on the way home. Russ Kent's message, he's preaching at 8:15. So we bless that. Save kids and draw all these kids close to the Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay. We sang a lot of good songs.